A document nobody was supposed to see just surfaced. Inside the pages of what sources are calling Project Checkmate, Elon Musk has reportedly assembled a 347-page dossier containing financial records, intercepted communications, and undisclosed offshore transactions tied directly to Gavin Newsom. What you're about to discover has been circulating in closed-door meetings across Washington for weeks. 3 separate investigations are converging. A countdown has begun. And the man who once ruled California with absolute confidence is about to face the reckoning nobody saw coming. Behind the glass walls of X headquarters in Austin, Elon Musk sits alone in a conference room lit only by the glow of 3 monitors. The largest screen displays a digital folder labeled Operation Transparency. His legal team delivered the final compilation hours earlier. 347 pages. Bank statements from accounts in the Cayman Islands. Wire transfer logs showing movement of funds through shell companies registered in Delaware and Monaco. Communications between Newsom's former chief of staff, Dana Williamson, and executives at Silicon Valley Bank dated weeks before its spectacular collapse. And buried in the appendix, a list of 17 California legislators who received campaign contributions from entities traced back to the same offshore network. Musk leans back in his chair, arms crossed. "They wanted a war," he mutters to himself. "Now they'll get transparency." Across the continent in Sacramento, Governor Gavin Newsom stands before a mirror in the executive suite, adjusting his tie. His communications director enters the room carrying a tablet. "Sir, we have a problem," she says quietly. "Multiple sources are reporting that Musk has compiled financial records. The DOJ is asking questions. Trump's team is circulating rumors. And there's talk of a Senate subpoena." Newsom's expression doesn't change. He straightens his cuffs with practiced calm. "Elon's desperate," he replies smoothly. "This is what billionaires do when they can't control the narrative. Let him scream into the void. California doesn't bend to threats." But his eyes betray something else. Concern. Calculation. The understanding that this time, the threat isn't coming from social media posts or political posturing. This time, the threat has documentation. Inside a secure conference room at the Department of Justice in Washington, 3 federal prosecutors review the preliminary findings submitted by an anonymous whistleblower. The source, identified only as Insider 7, claims to have worked within Newsom's financial operations during his first gubernatorial term. The file includes copies of asset declarations that allegedly omit significant holdings, references to beneficial ownership structures designed to obscure the governor's stake in entities that profited from state contracts, and most damning, a notation referencing communications between Newsom's office and executives at a now-defunct bank weeks before regulatory intervention that saved certain depositors from total loss. One prosecutor sets down his coffee. "If even half of this checks out, we're looking at undisclosed conflicts of interest on a scale we haven't seen in decades." His colleague nods slowly. "The question is, who gave this to us? And why now?" The answer arrives in the form of a single-line email sent from an encrypted server at 11:47 p.m. Eastern Time. "You're welcome. More coming soon. EM." The dossier Musk assembled didn't materialize overnight. It represents months of coordinated research conducted by a team of forensic accountants, former intelligence analysts, and data specialists operating under strict non-disclosure agreements. Their mandate was simple: follow the money. What they discovered exceeded even Musk's expectations. Financial records obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests revealed that 3 wineries owned by Newsom maintained accounts at Silicon Valley Bank, holding combined balances exceeding $12 million at the time of the bank's collapse. Public disclosures filed by Newsom listed these businesses as held in blind trust, yet the documents showed direct involvement in credit negotiations as recently as 14 months before the failure. The research team also identified a series of shell companies registered in the British Virgin Islands, with nominee directors listed on incorporation papers. Cross-referencing leaked data from the Pandora Papers investigation with California campaign finance records produced a pattern. Funds originating from offshore entities flowed through intermediary political action committees before landing in campaigns supporting Newsom's legislative priorities. The amounts weren't massive by billionaire standards, but the structure suggested intentional concealment. A recently leaked internal memo from Newsom's 2026 campaign operation reveals the governor's team discussing inoculation strategies against what they called coordinated attacks from tech oligarchs with authoritarian tendencies. The memo, dated several weeks ago, references Musk by name and outlines plans to frame any revelations about Newsom's finances as bad faith smears orchestrated by MAGA extremists bitter about California's progressive leadership. One section reads, "We must preemptively discredit any financial allegations by emphasizing the governor's transparent compliance with disclosure laws and contrasting his record with Trump's refusal to release tax returns." But the memo also includes a warning. If substantive documentation emerges, we pivot immediately to targeted political persecution narrative and activate allied media to question source credibility. At Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump receives a briefing from advisors about the escalating conflict between Musk and Newsom. Trump leans forward, grinning. "Elon's got him on the ropes," he says. "Gavin's been running his mouth for years. Now someone finally has the receipts." One advisor cautions that getting involved could backfire, especially given Trump's own rocky history with Musk. But Trump waves him off. "Elon and I understand each other. We both know what it's like when the system comes after you. And Newsom? He's been auditioning for president by trashing me every chance he gets. If Elon wants to take him down, I'm not standing in the way." Within hours, Trump posts on Truth Social. Gavin Newsom talks a big game about transparency and accountability, but rumor has it he's got some very interesting financial arrangements that the public knows nothing about. Elon Musk is a patriot for demanding answers. The American people deserve the truth. The Post ignites a firestorm. Cable news networks scramble to cover the story. Hashtags trend nationwide. And in Sacramento, Newsom's team realizes they're no longer controlling the narrative. The most explosive section of Musk's dossier involves what investigators are calling the SVB connection. When Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, creating panic across the tech industry, Newsom personally lobbied the White House and Treasury Department to ensure depositors would be made whole, even beyond the federally insured limit of $250,000. At the time, Newsom framed his involvement as protecting California jobs and the innovation economy. But the dossier alleges something more personal. According to financial records obtained by Musk's team, Newsom's 3 wineries, Plumpjack, Cade, and Odette, held accounts at SVB with balances totaling over $12 million. If the government hadn't intervened, Newsom stood to lose millions. California law explicitly prohibits public officials from using their positions to influence matters in which they have a direct financial interest. Newsom's office has maintained that all his business holdings are managed through a blind trust, insulating him from conflicts. But documents suggest Newsom remained involved in key business decisions, including credit negotiations with SVB, well into his governorship. One former employee, speaking to Musk's investigators under condition of anonymity, stated, "The blind trust was a legal fiction. Gavin knew exactly where his money was." Lena Khan, chair of the Federal Trade Commission, receives an unexpected communication from Musk's legal team. The message is brief and formal. It references ongoing concerns about anti-competitive practices by state-level actors using regulatory authority to target specific companies and individuals. Attached is a summary of California regulatory actions against Musk-owned enterprises over the past 3 years. Denials of permit expansions for SpaceX launches, investigations into Tesla's full self-driving technology, proposed legislation targeting social media platforms owned by individuals with demonstrated hostility to content moderation standards. The implication is clear. Newsom has weaponized state power against Musk for political reasons, and Musk is building a federal case. Khan's office declines to comment publicly, but sources familiar with the FTC's internal discussions say the agency is evaluating whether state actions constitute coordinated interference with interstate commerce. If the FTC moves forward, it could open an entirely new front in the battle between Musk and Newsom, one that involves not just optics or public opinion, but actual legal jeopardy. In a secure location outside Washington, a group of political strategists and former intelligence operatives convene for what they describe as a scenario planning session. The topic: what happens if the Musk dossier goes public in its entirety? One participant, a former senior advisor to Barack Obama, expresses concern. Gavin's been positioning himself as the progressive alternative to Trump. If this narrative takes hold, that he's just another politician hiding wealth and manipulating the system, it destroys his brand. Another voice interjects. The real danger isn't the offshore accounts or the SVB situation. It's the pattern. When you combine the financial opacity with the Williamson indictment, the narrative writes itself. Newsom runs a pay-to-play operation disguised as progressive governance. The group discusses contingency plans, preemptive media blitzes, surrogates deployed to attack Musk's credibility, calls to allies in Congress to launch investigations into Musk's government contracts. But there's an underlying anxiety in the room. They know that in the age of social media and viral content, once a narrative catches fire, it's almost impossible to extinguish. A 48-hour deadline quietly circulates among select members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Sources say Musk has agreed to provide the full dossier to congressional investigators, but only under specific conditions. First, the documents must be entered into the official record, ensuring legal protection and public accessibility. Second, Newsom must be subpoenaed to testify under oath about his financial disclosures and potential conflicts of interest. Third, the investigation must include examination of coordinated regulatory actions against Musk's companies to determine whether they constitute retaliation. If these conditions are met, Musk will deliver the dossier within 2 days. If not, he's prepared to release it directly to the public through X, bypassing traditional media entirely. Senate Republicans see an opportunity. Newsom has become a symbol of Democratic opposition to Trump. Taking him down would be a major political victory. But some moderates worry about the precedent. If Musk can use his platform and resources to trigger federal investigations of political enemies, what does that mean for the balance of power? The clock is ticking. Economic analysts begin modeling the potential fallout if Newsom faces formal investigation or indictment. California's economy, the 5th largest in the world, depends on political stability and investor confidence. A protracted corruption scandal involving the governor could trigger capital flight. Companies already on the fence about remaining in California due to high taxes and regulations might accelerate their departures. Commercial real estate markets in San Francisco and Los Angeles, already weakened by remote work trends, could face further decline. And with Newsom sidelined, the state's legislative agenda could stall, creating a power vacuum. One prominent economist based in Silicon Valley tells reporters, if Newsom goes down, it's not just a political earthquake, it's an economic one. Billions of dollars in investment decisions hinge on the perception of stability. Meanwhile, stock prices for companies with significant California exposure begin experiencing unusual volatility. Traders whisper about the Newsom risk. Back in Sacramento, Newsom's inner circle convenes an emergency strategy session. The governor enters the room with his trademark confidence, but the tension is palpable. His chief legal counsel lays out the situation. We have 3 problems. First, the financial disclosures. If Musk has documentation showing you were involved in SVB decisions while holding accounts there, that's a conflict of interest. Second, the offshore entities. Even if they're legal, the optics are terrible. Third, the Williamson indictment. The feds are building a corruption case, and there's speculation you could be the ultimate target. Newsom cuts him off. Elon Musk is a billionaire with a god complex who's angry because California won't let him do whatever he wants. This is a hit job, and we're going to fight it. His communications director tries to interject. Governor, with respect, the documents... Newsom's voice rises. I don't care about the documents. We frame this as an authoritarian attack on democratic governance. We make Elon the villain, not me. And we remind people that I've been fighting for working families while he's been cozying up to Trump. But even as he speaks, Newsom knows the landscape has shifted. This isn't a fight he can win with charm and media savvy alone. Donald Trump, sensing an opportunity to apply maximum pressure, announces that his administration is launching a comprehensive review of federal funding to California. The stated reason is ensuring taxpayer dollars are managed with integrity and transparency. But everyone understands the subtext. If Newsom is under investigation, Trump can justify withholding disaster relief funds, infrastructure grants, and other federal support. The move is politically calculated. It puts Newsom in an impossible position. If he fights back, he looks like he's protecting his own interests at the expense of Californians who need federal aid. If he capitulates, he appears weak. Trump posts on Truth Social. California gets more federal money than any state. If their governor can't even disclose his own finances, how can we trust him with billions of taxpayer dollars? Time for accountability. Newsom's team scrambles to respond, calling the move extortion and a constitutional crisis. But polling shows that even among California Democrats, questions about Newsom's finances are beginning to register. Trust is eroding. Musk makes his next move. At exactly 9 a.m. Eastern Time, he posts a thread on X. For months, I've watched Gavin Newsom weaponize California's government against me, my companies, and anyone who dares question his authority. He's labeled me an oligarch, an authoritarian, a threat to democracy. But here's the truth. I'm not the one hiding offshore accounts. I'm not the one lobbying the government to bail out my personal investments. I'm not the one whose chief of staff was just indicted for corruption. Gavin Newsom is. The thread continues. I've compiled a dossier. 347 pages of financial records, communications, and evidence that the public deserves to see. I've offered it to Congress under conditions that ensure transparency and accountability. If they refuse, I'll release it myself. The people of California and America have a right to know who they're really dealing with. The post goes viral within minutes. Millions of views, hundreds of thousands of shares. Cable news networks cut to breaking coverage. And in Sacramento, Newsom's worst nightmare is unfolding in real time. Behind the scenes, Barack Obama places a call to Newsom. The conversation is brief but pointed. Gavin, this is getting out of control, Obama says. You need to get ahead of it. If there's anything in that dossier that can hurt you, it's better to disclose it now on your own terms than let Musk control the narrative. Newsom insists there's nothing to disclose. Everything is legal. Everything is in compliance. But Obama is unconvinced. Legal and compliant aren't the same as transparent, and transparency is what people expect, especially from someone positioning himself for a presidential run. The call ends without resolution. Newsom is determined to fight. Obama is quietly distancing himself, unwilling to be dragged into a scandal that could tarnish his own legacy and influence within the Democratic Party. The elite network that once protected Newsom is beginning to fracture. In the halls of Congress, momentum builds for a formal investigation. Republican senators draft a letter demanding that the Senate Judiciary Committee subpoena both Musk and Newsom to testify. The letter, signed by 18 senators, argues that credible allegations of corruption and financial misconduct by a sitting governor require immediate congressional scrutiny. Democrats on the committee push back, accusing Republicans of conducting a politically motivated witch hunt designed to damage a potential 2028 presidential candidate. But the pressure is mounting. 3 Democratic senators, facing tough re-election battles in swing states, quietly signal they would support subpoenas if the evidence is compelling. The calculation is simple. Defending Newsom could cost them their seats. The balance is shifting. Musk's dossier includes a section that even his closest advisors urged him to reconsider releasing. It involves allegations of coordinated suppression of information. According to encrypted communications obtained by Musk's investigators, members of Newsom's media team allegedly contacted executives at major social media platforms and news organizations requesting content moderation of stories related to the governor's finances. The communications reference concerns about misinformation and conspiracy theories, but critics argue they represent attempts to censor legitimate investigative reporting. One email, allegedly sent from a Newsom campaign account, reads, "We need to make sure these offshore narratives don't gain traction. Can we flag this as misleading content?" If authenticated, the emails would confirm accusations that Newsom has used informal pressure to shape media coverage. It's a bombshell that could transform the narrative from financial impropriety to authoritarian suppression of free speech. And Musk, who has built his brand around free speech absolutism, sees it as the ultimate vindication. Protests begin erupting across California. In Los Angeles, a crowd estimated at over 5,000 gathers outside the state capitol, holding signs reading, "Release the records" and "No more secrets." The demonstration is organized by a coalition of libertarian activists, disaffected Democrats, and Musk supporters. Counter-protesters also appear, defending Newsom and accusing Musk of orchestrating a billionaire coup. The scene turns chaotic as the two groups clash verbally, with police struggling to maintain order. Similar protests break out in San Francisco, San Diego, and Sacramento. Social media amplifies the images. News helicopters circle overhead, and the national spotlight intensifies. Newsom, watching the coverage from his office, realizes that this is no longer a political skirmish. It's a full-scale war for public opinion, and he's losing. At 11:59 p.m., 1 minute before Musk's self-imposed deadline, the Senate Judiciary Committee issues a statement. In light of serious allegations regarding financial disclosures and potential conflicts of interest, the committee will hold hearings to examine the facts. Both Elon Musk and Governor Gavin Newsom will be invited to testify. The American people deserve transparency and accountability from their leaders. This investigation will be conducted with fairness and rigor. Musk responds immediately on X. Truth wins, always. Newsom issues a statement through his press office. "I welcome the opportunity to set the record straight and expose this coordinated attack for what it is. A desperate attempt by billionaires and their political allies to silence progressive leadership. I have nothing to hide. The stage is set. Two of the most polarizing figures in American public life are heading toward a confrontation that will be televised, scrutinized, and debated across every platform and news outlet in the country. At stake is not just Newsom's political future, but the broader question of accountability in an era where wealth, power, and information intersect in unprecedented ways. Musk believes he's fighting for transparency and justice. Newsom believes he's defending democratic governance against oligarchic interference. The truth, as always, is more complex than either narrative allows. But in the court of public opinion, complexity rarely wins. What wins is the story that resonates, the story that confirms what people already believe, the story that spreads fastest and burns brightest. This is not just a battle between two men. It's a battle over the future of American politics, over whether institutions can still hold the powerful accountable, over whether transparency is a principle or a weapon, over whether the truth, when it finally emerges, will matter at all. And over the coming days and weeks, as the dossier's contents are examined, debated, and dissected, the nation will watch to see which story prevails. The story of a governor caught in a web of financial secrecy and corruption, or the story of a billionaire using his wealth and platform to destroy a political enemy. Only one thing is certain. This is far from over. The first hearing is scheduled. The documents are being prepared. The witnesses are being briefed. And somewhere in the shadows, other players are watching, waiting, calculating their next moves. Because in the world of elite power and political warfare, every revelation opens new possibilities. Every scandal creates new opportunities. And every downfall clears the path for someone else's rise. Gavin Newsom thought he could outlast Elon Musk. He thought he could rely on his political skills, his media savvy, and his network of allies to weather the storm. But he underestimated the determination of a man who doesn't lose, who doesn't back down, who treats every conflict as a war to be won. And now, with the walls closing in and the evidence mounting, Newsom faces the fight of his life. A fight he cannot afford to lose. A fight that will define his legacy. A fight that started with a single document and could end with the collapse of everything he's built. The secret dossier Elon Musk has against Gavin Newsom isn't just a collection of financial records. It's a weapon. Carefully assembled, strategically deployed, designed to expose, to damage, to destroy. Whether it succeeds depends on what's inside those 347 pages, and whether the American people believe what they see. Because in the end, this isn't about laws or regulations or offshore accounts. It's about power. Who has it? Who wants it? And how far they're willing to go to keep it or take it away. The countdown has begun. The pieces are moving. And the final chapter of this story is about to be written. What happens next will shock the nation. What happens next will change everything. What happens next depends on you. Write in the comments. Truth wins. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this story is exploding and the mainstream media won't tell you the full truth. Share this with 3 people who need to know what's really happening behind the curtain. The algorithm tries to suppress this information, but your voice is stronger. You're not just watching history, you're part of it. The battle for transparency, for accountability, for the soul of American democracy is happening right now, and it needs you. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and never stop demanding the truth.